Welcome to Coast Creatives, a podcast for and about working professional artists within the entertainment industry. I'm Torrin Cavens Flores, and along with my co-host Joe Funk, we interview actors, directors, photographers, writers, and many, many more. In this episode, we'll be talking with Nancy Hayden, Executive Director of the Detroit Creativity Project, a nonprofit that helps Detroit youth transform their lives by teaching them to improvise, a tool that fosters collaboration and respect for others, builds literacy, and encourages experimentation in a safe, supportive setting. In addition to this work, Nancy also designed and oversaw the curriculum for all youth programs at the Second City Detroit. She went on to become the artistic director of the Second City Training Center in Chicago, where she was responsible for the design and operations of their educational programs. Joe and I are truly honored to have her as our guest, so enough out of me, and let's listen and grow with Nancy Hayden.
Welcome to the show, Nancy.
Well, thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much for being here, for chatting with us. You're zooming in from Detroit at the moment.
I'm in Detroit, and I'm thrilled to be here.
And how does it feel to be back?
I love it. I'm really, really glad to be back. My family's here, and I love the scene here. I love the community here. I mean, it literally felt like coming home because that's what it was. And it's just been, it's been fantastic. And we got here right before the holidays too. So it was just that perfect time to come home, and be around your family. And I'm really, really fortunate. It's amazing.
I'm from the Midwest as well. I'm from the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And a lot of those flyover Midwest states and cities, people don't know a lot about them.
That's right.
How would you pitch Detroit, especially the artistic community that you guys have there?
I think if I were to pitch it just as like a city, I would be like, we're a city on the comeback, because that's what everybody's always saying. And yet, to a certain degree, I feel like Detroit's always making a comeback in some way or another. And that describes the city. Like, if I had to use one word, and I certainly don't, credit myself for this because everybody says this about Detroit. The word that pops to mind is resiliency. Like, it is, the people here are resilient. The city is resilient. It's, there's something about being kind of like the punchline for a lot of late night shows for many, many years as, one of the most crime ridden cities in the country, that makes you really appreciate what you have and sort of protective over it. And, I don't want to use the word defensive, but certainly I think everybody who comes from here, works really, really hard to be great at what they do, because it's that little chip on your shoulder of like, Detroit is great and we're going to prove it to you. And I think people ask me all the time about performers and improvisers from Detroit and like, what's in the water there? Because there have been so many amazingly talented people who, came out of this town.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. I think it's that you never give up. You always feel like you have a little something to prove, and it kind of gives everybody a good edge. And then, there's other parts of the history of art here that you don't have to defend, like Motown, for example.
Yes.
There's just some tremendous things that have come out of this city.
Yeah. I mean, it's a city that is definitely really, really, really well known for the music scene. But what is the theater community like there?
It's amazing. The theater community is amazing. The improv community is amazing. It's, the theaters in this town are, again, they're beloved by the community. And so I think that it's the kind of place where you can cut your teeth if you want to move to another market. But it's also, I think what people don't realize is Michigan's also the kind of place where you can create a really wonderful career for yourself. There are a lot of, regional actors, we'll say, who will do performances at different, equity houses or different regional theaters in the area, and they'll make a tremendous living here. And then there's always new theater going on. There's always new works going on. There are just these small theaters all around downtown, and they've got that independent spirit, and they're always creating new stuff. It's really wonderful, and some incredible talent in this town.
Yeah.
And, some people leave here and go and make it, and they become super famous and then the whole world knows about them. And there are just as many people that I admire so deeply who've stayed here and made Detroit kind of the hub of their entire career. And I admire the heck out of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have it in the back of your mind when you were in Chicago or in Los Angeles of maybe I might like to circle back to Detroit?
Yeah, I did. We talk a lot. My husband's from England, and we talk a lot about kind of, our final chapter maybe being final chapter. That sounds so, so horrible. I'm going to go lay down in England and die one day, Joe.
Nancy Hayden, the final chapter.
The final chapter. No, but we talk about going there someday. Because when we first got married, when you marry somebody from another continent, it's like, well, we'll do 10 years in America, and then maybe we'll go, then we'll do 10 years in the UK. And then that 10 years goes by in like the blink of an eye. And then we're kind of like, maybe 15 or 20. We'll see. But we're very happy here right now. But it would not surprise me at all if someday we didn't end up in the UK. I've always been a huge Anglophile. I love their comedy. I love, everything about it. And I think, my husband would love to be back there someday. So I could see us doing that someday. And because of that, I kind of had in the back of my mind when I was living in LA and Chicago, like, I'd love to go soak up as much time as I can with my family for a while before we ever someday make that UK move.
Before the final chapter.
Before the final chapter. So dark. But also artistically, like, there's something about, and I think this is true for a lot of the folks that I worked with early days on the scene here in Detroit. It's like this attitude of like, I'm going to go make it. And then I'm going to like, Detroit it's in you deep, and it's like, I'm going to give back to Detroit, or I'm going to, write something that is set in Detroit, like, like friends of ours have done, or, or what have you. And then they do it because you just kind of, it's the sort of place that you really want to capture and tell everybody about. And so I think that's where like when Tim and Sam created Detroiters, like that was what that was about. It was like, they didn't want to go to LA and make a show about living in LA. They wanted to go to LA and make a show about living in Detroit.
Was it shot in LA or Detroit?
No, we shot here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's awesome.
Did you go back for any of the shooting? Cause you were a writer on
I was in
show.
The writer's room. The whole production was here. Everything.
Oh, wow.
Like we took the third floor of the Masonic Temple, and everything was here. Like payroll was here, wardrobe was here, like the entire production was here. Comedy Central was incredibly generous about that.
That's amazing.
And the writer's room was here. Because it just had, and then it had to shoot here. It just all had to be here. It's called Detroiters. You can't just go shoot in North Hollywood. It just doesn't have the same feel.
No. So you are the executive director at the Detroit Creativity Project.
Yes, I am.
Tell us a little bit about DCP.
Yeah. So the Detroit Creativity Project sends wonderful, amazing, talented teaching artists into the Detroit schools, and we teach improv to middle schoolers, high schoolers, and it's really incredible. It was founded and started by a couple of pals of mine from the Second City in Detroit, Mark Evan Jackson, who I think you probably know, and his wife, Beth Hagenlocker, are our founders. And exactly what I was talking about before, folks leave here and go work in another market, in this case, LA on Mark and Beth's case. And then the first thing they want to do is create something that's going to benefit the city of Detroit. And we love them for that. So, we've been around for a decade now. DCP started in 2012, and I was one of the very first teaching artists they had and went into one of the first pilot schools. And so I was a teacher for them 10 years ago. And then I started serving on their board, and I was vice president of the board for the past 6 or 7 years. And, now I just had this amazing, wonderful opportunity to move home and become the executive director. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible organization. We teach improvisation, and it isn't in service of creating an army of improviser performers. Right. It's more about it's about improv as a life skill. And that's why we're so passionate about bringing it into the schools, because, there are a lot of kids in middle schools and high schools who maybe someday want to be performers, but there are a lot more who could use, the tenets of improvisation to help them with their life skills.
Yeah, exactly. On the website, it says improv isn't just for actors.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean?
Well, I mean, it means exactly what I said. Like, it's great training for actors. And I think if you are an actor, I don't really think you can become an actor these days without getting some improv training. Like, pretty much sooner or later, your agent's going to be like, go get some improv training. Yeah. But, you know, as a social skill, as a life skill, as a confidence builder, it just, you can't beat it, you know, and there are studies now. We had a study done a few years ago from the University of Michigan that has proven, you know, just the amount of social and emotional learning and social skills that improv builds in people. It gives you a level of confidence to be able to think on your feet and react in any given situation. And that is, especially now with the last few years that we've had, right? Like, I can't, coming into this executive director job now, I'm thinking constantly about what these high schoolers and middle schoolers have been through over the last 3 years. And I don't think we're going to know for years the effects of what these last 3 years have had on, I mean, can you imagine when you were a freshman in high school, if the world shut down the way it did, and then you had to go to school virtually for 2 years, like how that would stunt your social growth? Yeah. You know, and we continued on through all of that. We had virtual classes, and sometimes those virtual classes, those improv classes, brought them together in a way that nothing else really was, you know, and now that they're back in person, they've been learning these skills that they can carry with them physically back into the building.
How exactly does improv translate over virtual?
That's a really good question. So when I used to work for the Second City, and I was the artistic director of the Second City Chicago, that entire training center. So that's, you know, hundreds of teachers and many classes. And we, you know, on the Monday of the shutdown, we had 1 week to take the entirety of the Second City Training Center virtual. And that was my entree into like, we'll be right back, because we totally know how to do this. We're just going to get our ducks in a row, and we'll be right back and tell you what we're going to do. And then it was all these meetings of like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So we were trying to figure that all out together. And we learned that it translates better than you think it's going to. Okay. I mean, here's this art form that you would believe you could only do in person. You know, I'm not going to lie. I think like many things, we all prefer to be in person for it, but it was pretty amazing how much it did translate and how it forced improvisers and students to focus in different areas. You know, for example, one of the big philosophies and tenets of improvisation is give and take, right? I listen to you, we respond, we go back and forth. When you're doing it through Zoom, you have no choice but to do that, you know, so the amount of focus that it requires for everybody to be aware of what the give and take is like going on, playing a game on Zoom is, you know, really a challenge. And then they have this amazing concentration level coming out of that. So it was pretty incredible how well it translated. Like many of the games and exercises that you do in improv, they're flexible. You know, we've always known that you could use many different improv games to teach a ton of different takeaway lessons. And then when we started, you know, tearing them apart during the pandemic, it was like, well, I'll be damned. They also are really, you know, amenable to being able to adjust to this. They're very malleable in that way, the exercises. And, you know, thank you, Viola Spolin, for creating this amazing art form that has been used to socialize children and train actors and do all these incredible things over all these decades.
Wow. I got to say that when I was going over all your information, it really resonated with me and connected, because I teach acting as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I've had like, you know, business people come to me to take classes just to get better at talking to people and engaging with clients and all of that. And I was almost brought to tears when I was reading through everything that you do, because it's so sad how arts are oftentimes just like the first thing to go out of school.
100%.
It's not just like about performing, you know, it's so much deeper than that. Yeah. And it's like a necessary skill. It really is. And it's so sad that it gets cut. And reading the statistics on your site are just blowing my mind. I have a couple here, like 6 in 10 children in Detroit live in poverty, and only 1 of 10 are proficient readers by 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
that is heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And you're so right about the arts. And, when we partner with different schools, we'll come in, some of whom they don't have any theater department at all to speak of for the high school students. Others are, the age old story of like, well, we have a theater department, but it's being taught by this, poor beleaguered history teacher or science teacher. That happens all the time.
All the time.
And there are these incredible people. There are these incredible teachers that we partner with, and they're like, oh, thank God you're here. Thank God you're here to help us, through this year. And we'll go in for 10 weeks at a time, usually one day a week. And we hear all the time from people like, they don't come, like a lot of kids can't make it to school, but they come on improv day. And by the way, like when you miss school in Detroit for many, many kids, it isn't because they, slept in and didn't want to get up that day. It's because
they have to play a part in making money to help their family survive. Like
that's it. That's it. I was at work until midnight last night. I have 2 jobs, or my parents have 4 jobs, and they have no one to look after my little brothers and sisters. Like there are many, many days where Detroit school kids have to make that decision, or it's made for them of like, no, not today. You can't go today. So because life is happening. So that's a reality, and it's a reality in so many cities across the country. And you're so right. Like, the direction that we're going in and what we're prioritizing in terms of education now. Like social skills are not being set at the forefront. That's for sure. And again, that's what, you walk into one of these rooms and you'll say, hey, how many of you want to be an actor? Maybe 2 hands will go up, but then it's like, how many of you want to nail a job interview one day? And now now it's like, what did you just say? And like, that's where we get to with improv. It's like, this is what this is about. This is about you building confidence, believing in yourself, and building like, the verbal, emotional, social skills to know that whatever is thrown at you, you'll be able to handle it in any situation. And then these kids realize how incredibly smart they are, how incredibly brilliant they are. And because the other thing is, like on the other side of things, they're doing stuff. These kids are doing stuff that we never ever did when I was in school. Like the coding that they know and the programming that they know, and like that sort of like electronic language that they speak. Like these are brilliant kids who are not given the opportunities to expand in all these different ways. So to be able to put a voice to that is super empowering for many of them. And we have alums from the program who've, some are from schools like, Cass Technical High School, which is sort of like fame. It's like this amazing theater department. There's another school it's called Detroit School of the Arts, and DSA is what it's called. And it's literally just incredible kids who are, they're going to go off to these amazing schools, and these will be our stars of tomorrow. And then there's a lot of kids who, at these amazing schools that, we have people who have become like Detroit police officers, and they've are becoming teachers themselves, and are going to turn around and be able to make a difference. We improvise through our lives every single day. We're doing it right now. So imagine what a skill that would be for a teacher to have, to be able to interact with these 36 kids in your classroom in the moment, listening, responding, not pre-planning. These are all the tenets of improv that, and we've known for a long time that improvisation is like a great skill for, say, business training. I think everybody knows that by now. If you've been on a team at a business for any length of time, you've probably taken an improv class that you may or may not have wanted to go to. But at the end of the day, it's true though. It's like, it's a cliche for a reason. It's a cliche because it works. The tenets of improvisation absolutely directly correlate to successful business management and team building. And everything about it, from agreement to listening to giving gifts back and forth with one another. It's a very giving art form. It's a supportive art form. It's an ensemble art form. And that's the thing. If we can't teach these kids anything else, it's if they can respect each other as a group and respect each other's opinions and each other's gifts that they bring to the scene, it's going to help them respect their fellow man as adults. And I know that may sound a little dramatic, but like, if there's one thing that I can think of that this world needs more of right now, it's that. Like,
100%.
Politicians need improv.
Oh my God.
Washington, D.C. needs improv. Like, that's where the training should be happening.
Yeah, let's get them in classes like 6 days a week, 6 hours a day. Let's get that going right now.
Because if we could all listen to each other a little bit more, it would be, I think it would help.
It'd be a better world to live in.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
There, we solved the world's problems.
And we're done. We
we're
did it
done.
in 20
Play the
minutes.
theme song.
Perfect.
Play the theme song. We're out.
And you were talking about how, like, you would notice, okay, like sometimes they're missing some days, some classes, some days coming into school, but they're not missing improv. How is it being received? And what is it like to also view how this is being received by all these students?
They love it. They absolutely love it. And to be able to express their ideas, to do something different. And again, many of the kids who are hugely successful in this class don't consider themselves performers, will never consider themselves performers. We just got to do our student showcase for the first time in 4 years, by the way. We haven't done one since 2019, and we just did it last weekend at this amazing theater here in Detroit called the Detroit Public Theater. Shout out to them. We partnered with them in their gorgeous space, and we had a student showcase in there where, kids from 7 different schools there, and our teaching artists were up on stage with them, and it was amazing. Like, I can't even tell you how it feels to watch anybody, really. I feel the same way about my adult improv students, but to watch someone get up on stage and do this thing that they've learned, like, okay, you talk, I talk, we just give back and forth. And they've forgotten that what's going to happen is they're going to get their first laugh from strangers in a house. Like, these kids had never, ever done this in front of an audience before, except for one another. And the look on their faces when people were like laughing at what they were saying and like wild applause was going on. And I mean, it was incredible to watch, and like that sort of confidence building is just immeasurable. It's incredible, so I think that, again, this isn't about like actor school. Mark always says all the time, and we always say that it's like everybody should learn improv. Like, improv just makes better humans. It just makes humans better humans. And the amount of people who've come to me, like, I love teaching these kids. I love what we do with the DCP, but I've taught improv for 25 years. Yeah. And like, that's a lot of classes. And a lot of students, and the amount of adult students who've come up to me after class, I've absolutely lost count of the amount of people who come up to me and say, this has made me a better fill in the blank, a better teacher, a better lawyer, a better partner, a better parent, a better child, a better whatever. And it does, like, I've had lawyers take these classes because it helps them to think on their feet in court. And then they'll say to us, like, but this has got my whole brain shifted thinking in a way that I've never thought before. It's just, and that's what you were saying, Torrin, about like any arts education, somebody who comes up through STEM learning and goes straight through, into a sciences career, into a math career, to never endeavor into anything like that. I am such a proponent of people, having hobbies, taking classes in ways that expand the other half of their brain, the other side of their brain.
Yeah. Left brain, right brain. It's a thing. And I talk about it to my students all the time. It's like, you come in and, we're starting from the ground up here because you got to separate right brain from left brain. You have to learn to use that other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I have to learn math, they should have to learn improv.
I know.
Because learning math was the hardest thing.
I hate math so hard. It's the worst.
No, but I remember years ago at Second City, a whole full-grown woman coming up to me in level C. We taught the letter levels then, and level C was the first level where they had to do a show. And she will remain nameless, but she's now a friend. But I remember her coming up to me and saying, like, hey, I'm busy on the day of the show and I can't be there, and this and that and da-da-da. And I was like, all right, slow down. What's going on here? And she was absolutely hands down terrified to do that show. And she was like, this has been so fun. I came here for my first night, didn't think I'd like it. I met a million friends. I fell in love with it. Level A turns into level B turns into level C. But now we're like 3 weeks away from getting up in front of strangers and doing this. And this just got really real and I'm out. And I remember saying to her, like, I get it. this show's going to be a half hour long. Each student's maybe going to get to be in 2 or 3 games. You know, I'm going to be on that stage calling this show for you. Play one game, just do one game, and I will have your back. If you can't think of what to say, I will say it for you. Like, I will absolutely not let you fail. Just do this one show. And she did it, and she crushed it, and it was amazing. And she was like, when's level D? She's still doing it. She's still improvising. And she's an attorney, and she's, you know, one of these people who, like, you know, again, that side of the brain, like, this was, you know, I forget all the time, like, I like the engineering of flying, but I don't love to fly in an airplane when you want to talk about fears or whatever. But you forget how many people are absolutely terrified of speaking in public, getting up in front of people. And, you know, so then I'm like, I have to liken this to like being on a really bumpy flight or a snake coming up to me or something, because that's how scared of it people are. And I don't have that in my body. Like, I've wanted to be an actor since I was 7 years old. So like,
yeah, me too.
You know, it doesn't occur to me. It just, that doesn't register. But when people are that afraid of it and then they conquer that, face that and conquer it and take this class and get up in front of a crowd like that, I have immense respect for that.
It's a gift.
Yeah,
it's a gift.
What helps, because I'm one of those people that has a fear of it. I have a background in theater. I went to college and studied theater performance, and I remember that feeling of dreading having to do any sort of improv exercise, because I was very much, give me the lines, tell me where to stand and when to move there. And I remember that what really helped in those moments of facing that fear of doing improv was the community that we had built. It was my classmates. It was the other people that are up there. And it's kind of the energy that you're describing, where you're saying like, well, I'm going to be there with you. Yeah. If you don't have the words, I'm going to help you out. It's finding this group of people that will back each other up in that situation. And then a lot of that fear goes away.
And your job up there is to have each other's backs, literally. You know, like if I'm in a scene and it's dying, you know, someone from the back line should be editing that nonsense out of there, and we're moving on to our next thing.
Yeah.
You know?
When I would do improv, we had our team, and before each show, you know, we'd all just go, got your back, got your back, got your back, pat each other on the back. And, you know, it's a certain sense of comfort.
And does improv have many hecklers? Do you have people really? I know, because you open up the audience for suggestions. So does that sometimes open too many doors? And you're like, I've never heard somebody heckle in improv, but I've heard people heckle for stand up.
You haven't? You've never heard a drunk? Oh,
no, I don't think so.
Let me tell you a little story about Second Show Fridays at Second City. Like Second City's Second Show Fridays, number one, start at 11 o'clock at night. Number two, it's Friday. It's not Saturday, which means everyone in the audience worked that day. So these people have been awake since 6 a.m. They went to work all day. Then they went out to dinner and drinks, and they had to kill until 10 o'clock before they came to our second show. So our first show Friday was rowdy enough because that one starts at 8. Second show Friday, by the time you start that show at 11 o'clock, you're lucky these people are upright and are not like vomiting all over each other. That's where you get your really, really drunk crowds. Those crowds, and then the crowds that are like special shows. We used to play like frat nights for like fraternities and sororities from Michigan State. They would bust them into Second City, Detroit. Just absolute chaos. I've been in scenes before. I've been in shows where it's so loud in the crowd that you could comment on it on stage to one another. And the audience didn't even know that you were doing it. It was like, well, what do you want to do about this? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. I don't think it matters because no one's listening to us. Like literally stuff like that. Like it's just mayhem, beach balls flying back and forth. Insanity. Yeah. But the cool thing is when you can win a crowd like that over, because the thing with Second City Detroit that was cool was that nobody knew what it was, right? It was brand new. And that's a really cool thing about a lot of the arts in Detroit. And like I was talking about earlier, it's like everything is sort of, experimental and new here because and so when Second City Detroit opened in the 90s, mid 90s, it was like this brand new thing. There had never been a quote unquote franchise of Second City before, right? So there was at the time Chicago, Toronto, that's it. And then we were the third. And especially Detroit's not a big tourist city, as you can imagine, although there's far more now than there used to be. But back then, there wasn't a lot of tourism coming through Detroit. So the people who would come to our shows were the Metro Detroiters, right? The people from the surrounding area. They had no idea what we were. They didn't know. A lot of them had never been to Chicago. Like when you go to Chicago, you check into a hotel and you are educated on 3 things. You know, go to a Cubs game or the Art Institute, do something cultural like that, get a pizza. This is what they look like. They're 7 inches tall and you're going to love them. And the number 3 thing is go to Second City. Trust us. Like it's just an institution in that town. Yeah. They will sell out the main stage on a Tuesday. We were very, very different. We were relying upon Metro Detroit. They would call the theater during the day and be like, "Hey, who's playing tonight?" Because they thought it was a stand-up club, right? Like they didn't get it. Like, what is improv? What is it? And then when like Whose Line was coming along around that same time, they'd be like, "Oh, I get what this is. It's games and stuff." But what they didn't realize what Second City actually is, when you go, you sit down and you see like a Saturday Night Live-esque sketch show, right? That's an hour and a half to 2 hours long. And then we play a live improv set after the show. But the first part of the show that they see is written. It's been written through improvisation, but it is written sketch. As opposed to SNL where they have to write it in a week, we get about 2 months to write it, right? But it's a long show. And they didn't know what that was. So there was a really fun part. And it's very Detroit too, because Detroit's kind of gritty, and a little bit of that was fun of like these people come in not knowing what it is, but watch, we're going to win them over. And you could almost kind of feel that moment in like the middle of Act 1 where they get into the groove of like, oh, this is what this is. We like these people now. And like that was a huge part of why I wanted to become a director too when I left the cast, was because I loved the math of sketch and the math of improv. Like as a director, putting a running order together, it's crazy. You'll put a scene in one area and it won't get anything. You'll move it 2 scenes later in the running order and it kills. Like that stuff fascinated me. And you know, where like you have to put everybody you've got in the opener, because if the audience doesn't see everybody in the first scene, you can literally feel them not as warm to a person if they come in the second scene as opposed to the first scene. Like it's just all this crazy stuff. So I became obsessed with that. Like it was my entree to sketch. And you start as an actor and you become a writer, because the cast writes the shows under the direction of our director. And then I started teaching kind of the lower levels, first levels A and B, like in my early years. And then by the time I left, I really wanted to become a director. And I think most people who work at Second City will tell you that. It's like, that's one of the best things that it gives us. And that's why the alums are known as kind of these really chameleon people within the industry that can do everything. And like every top show on TV is filled with Second City alums in their writer's room too. You know, for every Second City alum who's starring in a show, there's probably 6 of them in the writer's room, because you go in as an actor and you come out as a writer and all these other things, you know, and I couldn't wait to direct. It was one of the things I really wanted to do. Plus they hadn't let a lot of women direct their main stages back then. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And I like what you said, where you're kind of chameleon afterwards, and you can adapt to so many situations. Colbert is one of my favorite late night hosts right now, just because of how well he can shift during interviews, and how
he's one of my favorite alums. His stuff at Second City was like some of my favorite stuff ever. And what he's done, I mean, I think one of the hardest things for sketch creators and students of, like, when you start studying at Second City, you start learning improv. By the end of it, if you go all the way through the advanced levels, you start learning about sketch, and you start learning how to create sketch. And the entire long program at a lot of these schools culminates in people like writing and performing their own sketch show. Yeah. And that's where they have to start learning like what satire is, right? I think Colbert understands satire possibly better than any contemporaries around today. I think of our generation, comedically, he was like generation like just before me, but I think he's one of the people, because what he did with the Colbert Report, the thing about satire is like, it's not about making fun of that which you want to make fun of. because that's what we call punching down. Like, it's easy to get up on stage and say, like, you know, you people suck because you think this and you think that, and we're just going to make fun of you. That's become the humor of America. And it's mean-spirited, and it turns people off instantly. If you want somebody to laugh, you have to create a situation where they can laugh with you. And with themselves, you absolutely have to. That's satire. You can't get up on stage and go, this group of people does this wrong. People who are homophobic are wrong, and we're going to write a scene about it. I do believe that people who are homophobic are wrong. But I also know as a comedian, if I write a scene that preaches to them how wrong they are, they're going to go, nope, this woke girl. Like, and they'll shut down. And that is the definition of what's keeping us separated these days. If you want to be successful as a satirist, you put that on stage. You create a show with a homophobe. You create a scene with a homophobe in the scene so that we're not preaching to them. We're showing what this person is like. And then hopefully that person loses at the end of the scene, which, you know, shows you. I'm getting off topic, but my point is what Colbert did with the Colbert Report was he made that guy the focus of the show. You know, he made himself a right-wing character to the point where people didn't know that he wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
He and his entire staff and every writer he's ever had, I think, just understand and manipulate the voice of satire in a way that we don't get to see much of these days. He's brilliant. Yeah. He's absolutely brilliant.
No, I agree. But when you're bringing in the students, you're working with these high school kids, a lot of them have the understanding that improv is, okay, yeah, I know whose line is it anyway. I know it's about being funny. It's about like making people laugh. And I've seen a lot of people in their first classes, like, that's where their mind is. They're like, okay, I'm a stand-up. I'm the star. I'm this. How do you reprogram them? Yeah. Especially since they don't intend on being performers. Like, how do you maneuver?
Two things that I'd like to comment on. I'd like to address that and then tell you about a new thing that we're doing where we are kind of inching toward the production side of things. But I think that the first thing that people have to learn with improv is surrender. It's the first thing. I talk to teachers a lot about, is it harder to teach kids? And I mean, when I say kids, I mean littles. Like, is it harder to teach little kids improv or grown-ups? And I always say they're hard for two completely different reasons. It's hard to teach kids because they have no filter, right? They just bounce off the walls. They want to make everything a gun. You know, little 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old kids.
Little Michael Scotts.
They're all little Michael Scotts, every one of them. And they really are. They want to fight with each other, especially the boys. They're crazy. They have no filter. So you need to rein them in. That's hard. It's hard to rein in little kids. We all know that. Harder still is to pull it out of adults because we start off as those kids with no filter and we're bouncing off the walls, and then we're told, sit down, be quiet for 20 years. Now we're 26 instead of 6, and we've been told be quiet and sit down so many times that now we're like afraid to get up in this class. It feels so counterintuitive to stand up in this class and say anything we want to say. It's especially, not to go off on a completely different tangent, but it's especially, I think, why comedy is so challenging for women, because girls even more so. Sit down, be quiet, don't show your, don't express your opinions. Like, we're supposed to be timid and shy and, whatever. I missed that lesson apparently. But like, and why the girls that I know, the women that I know who are great at this business are really, really, really so great at this business, because they've had to intentionally kind of carve out their personality and their humor in a world that tells them to be quiet all the time. But having said that, so adults, your first lesson is let go, surrender. We use the phrase, get out of your head. And because you can think of what to say, but there's a voice in your head telling you not to say it because it's stupid. Except for that one guy who you were talking about. That one guy who's like, he's the funniest guy in his office, and he comes there and he's like, hey, everybody, I cannot wait to tell my jokes. That guy has the toughest, he's got the toughest time in an improv class of anybody. Yeah. Because he's got to learn to listen. He's got to learn to give and take, to share the stage, and to not tell his jokes. I've been teaching this for 25 years. You don't think I know when you drop a pre-planned joke in an improv scene as opposed to responding to what was just said to you? Dude, nobody mentioned yogurt. Why are you making a joke about yogurt? Nobody even said yogurt.
Oh,
like,
that's
you
so
thought of that on the way
watch.
here.
Ugh.
You legit just thought of that on the way here. Like, don't do your tight 10 in my improv class.
No.
Go do stand up. Listen to what the person before you said. So, you start off with these games like one word story, and we go around a circle and speak one word at a time. It's so hard for people sometimes because they want to say the funny word or they want to skip ahead a few words. You can watch people going, oh, okay, there's 7 until I talk. I'm going to say kumquat because that word's hilarious. And then it's like, and then they say it and it comes out of nowhere and it derails the entire story that we're trying to tell. And if we go down, we're all going down together. Yeah. So that's why it's really difficult to teach adults. But having said all of that, what I was going to tell you about the kids is like, yes, it is very hard to ask them to risk embarrassment, to risk not getting a laugh, to risk saying something and it being stupid, especially in front of their peers, right? But when everyone's building it together, ideally in a scene, it's not about who's getting the laughs individually. It's about us getting the laugh together as a collective. And then if we succeed, we do it together. And if we fail, we do it together. And if you really buy into that and you really start working together as a group, it's actually one of the safest, most supportive, things you can do is be in a class like that. Yeah. Having talked about what we were just talking about, like with, taking it to the like these students who go all the way through these programs and learn to create satire and create sketch. We just created a syllabus this year called the 201 Advanced Syllabus. And we are teaching at 2 of our high schools right now this advanced improv to sketch class for the first time in the DCP. And it's amazing what these kids are creating. And we have them, we're not taking it to the point where they're actually writing physically down on paper, but they're doing something that we call re-improvisation, where they do a scene, we take it down, we talk about it as a group, kind of like a little writer's room. What worked really well about that scene? What did we love about it? Again, we come from this place of positivity. Oh, in this moment, we didn't really like that moment. You know what? That moment didn't happen. We're throwing it away. Let's talk about the beats of the scene that we loved. And then we'll go back and do it again, focusing on the stuff that we loved, and we'll make it better and better each time. This is how you write a sketch show. This is how you take something from an improvised outing that we just made up off the top of our head, and then you polish the scene down till it becomes this, diamond of a sketch. And the reason why it's important to teach that is because these kids live in a production studio. Hello, I'm holding up a phone right now, listeners. This is a production studio in your hand right here, right? Like they've got the opportunity. When I started improv, like there wasn't any of it. Like there wasn't even, I think we had the internet. I remember writing scenes on a brother word processor. I'm pretty sure like it was that long ago, but like, I don't even think I had a computer in my house, but like these kids now, like TikTok is everything. And, they can create something. We used to tell people all the time, like, oh, learn improv because, people who want to be actors, you can take your career, you can take control of your career and, make a web series and put it on YouTube. I was telling students that 7 years ago. Even in that amount of time, it's changed. Now that TikTok's there, it's like, oh no, you can go home tonight and write a 30-second bit in a character and film it tonight and edit it if you need to, or just put it up as it is, and you're on TikTok tonight and, a million people will see it and whatever. So it's I don't think people equate the seedlings of improv to this final product of, being able to create comedy and create satire, and they think like, I'm not a writer, so I can't do this. What do you think these kids are doing other than improv? When they're doing bits in character on TikTok, that's improv. Like that's it.
Yeah, I didn't even think about TikTok and all of that. There's so many like huge TikTok stars now that craft these characters. This is one, I don't know her name. She's this blonde girl, and she does like, she puts a towel on her head, and like all of a sudden she's her mom or her grandma, and she comes up with all of these voices, and she's playing against against herself. Yeah. So these kids are getting exposure to essentially that improv and that writing skill very early on, even though they aren't aware of it.
And that's the thing, is it's different now, with this generation of like, when you say like, oh, some people want to be actors, some don't. But there's no denying that this entire generation shares more and is more performative in general than we ever were. You know, if you grew up in a generation where you didn't have, you know, the internet and the ability to make little videos and put them on the internet, you know, everybody, I think an older generation criticizes today's younger generation unfairly so, in my opinion, of like, oh, they share everything that goes on in their lives. So would we have if we had it back then, you know, like there's, you know, I spent the whole night talking on the phone to my friends, like, cause that was the only way we could do it, you know. But if I could, you know, get on, if I could, and everyone that comes along, oh, Snapchat, ooh, this, ooh, that, you know, you watch them master these different things as they come along. And right now it's TikTok, and 2 years from now it's going to be something else, and we won't be able to remember TikTok the way we can't remember Snapchat. And it'll be like, oh, remember TikTok? You know, and it just keeps morphing.
Remember Vines?
Remember Vines? But what's crazy is watching them, you know, be so performative, and then they turn around and go, oh, I'm not an actor. But they'll share so much, and so much of their natural personalities are coming out in these videos. And I think it's amazing. And whether or not you're doing it because you want to be an influencer and you want 1 million followers and you blah, 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 even if not that, even just your small circle of friends are the only people who see what you do, being able to express yourself completely as yourself, I think is just a huge gift. And the fact that they've, you know, have the means to do it with things like TikTok is super cool to me. So I think that's where this training comes in really handy now too, is like for the kids who do want to be performers, you can look them in the eye. You don't have to say like, well, you're going to have to move to New York or LA, and you're going to have to struggle for decades and decades. And maybe you'll get a guest starring role on a TV series one time, you know. Instead, you can say, go home and write with your friends. Put it on TikTok this weekend.
Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about the world that we're living in. I shoot headshots for people of all ages, and I work with a lot of high school kids who are, you know, they're taking their first theater class in high school, and they're just like, well, I have all these ideas. I don't know what to do with these ideas. I'm like, well, write it. Yeah. Write a play, write a script. And if you don't know how, the resources are there. With the internet, you can learn how to do anything. I've never taken a formal photography class in my life. I went to YouTube Academy, and I learned all of that stuff online. Yeah, and YouTube Academy. It's so great that they have this opportunity now.
Yeah. This thing we're doing with this 201 syllabus at DCP is amazing because of that very thing. Like, we're kind of letting them lead us. It's, you know, it's sort of like, you know, okay, here are the basic tenets of improvisation. Most of the kids taking this class at the schools we're doing this right now have taken our course before, and they are performers. These are kids who are like also in the spring musical, and they're going away to school to be performers. And so they're very, you know, naturalistic with it, but they also, you know, watching them realize like, oh, you know, watching anybody learn how to manipulate a scene like that and turn it into something they want it to be. Now you're taking skills from the level of fun to the level of marketability. You know, like that's what I always said about Second City. Like I was talking about earlier, you'd come in with maybe one skill of being an actor, and then you'd leave 3 years later with 4 or 5 different marketable skills. And, you know, that's why so many of us become writers and become directors and become, you know, and teachers. And the more skills that I think people can pick up in this day and age is amazing. And like we were talking about earlier, Torrin, with, you know, arts education, I think it's going to benefit you no matter what you do in life. Even if you have no intention to go into the arts, and you veer away and you become the most, you know, robotic of job choices, whatever it is, this training's never going to be something that wasn't a good call, because it's always going to make you feel more confident in situations where you wouldn't normally be as comfortable. And that's just a huge gift, you know?
Absolutely.
I think it's also really important that these classes, the improv training, is introduced to them at this point in their life, because everybody looks back at high school, and most people say I either really loved it or I really hated it. It's that time when you're being divided up into groups. Yeah. You're getting divided up like, okay, these are the athletes. These are the band people, the choir people. Like they're putting all of these labels on this is who I am. The class clown. I'm sure the class clown goes into the improv and is like, I got this. I've been yucking it up in class all semester.
Yeah.
So I think I assume that it has it creates a bit of unity between all of these people that are at this point of their lives, like drifting away from each other and going towards this or that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it absolutely does. And that continues on as adults too. I mean, adult improv training, you bring together all these people from different backgrounds, all these people that have different senses of humor. That's been a really interesting, challenging thing with improv training over the last several years, is like, what makes a good joke? What is funny for funny's sake? What is the right laugh? I have that conversation a lot with the older, not the older students, but the more advanced students who are creating satire and creating sketch. Part of the reason why you have to put it up and then bring it down and work on it again and put it up again and keep polishing it is because you got to make sure that you're going for the right laugh. You have to, there's a right laugh and there's a wrong laugh. A right laugh plays from the top of its intelligence. A wrong laugh punches down and it might still get the laugh, but are you getting the right laugh? Are you punching down toward a group of people that are already marginalized, that it's easy to get a laugh anytime you just mention group A, B, or C of certain types of people? Like, that's the kind of stuff that it's my job to help steer people away from. And so when somebody comes in and starts taking training and they've only ever filtered humor and laughter through like that type of, prism, it's really hard to steer them away from that and explain why, and like as a female improv teacher, I remember I've had a lot of, students, usually male. I don't want to generalize, but usually it's the men who are like, trust me, this joke is really funny.
Oh God.
They're saying to their professional comedian teacher. And I remember one guy, again, shall remain utterly nameless. I won't even say what city I was in teaching this person, but I remember us having a conversation after class because he was really kind of like, he was pissed off in class that I was shutting down this scene he wanted to do and the idea, and explained why and why it was the wrong laugh. And if we want to take it like this, I offered him a few different takes. Maybe it's this kind of take. Maybe it's that kind of take. So he stayed after class to explain to me why it was funny. And I remember him saying to me literally like, you just don't, I think you just don't understand. Cause I think like, I think sometimes women get more offended by things and blah, blah. And I remember saying, buddy, I'm not offended as a woman. I'm offended as a comedian.
Yeah.
Because it's just not funny. Like, if comedians are snobs in any direction, it's comedy. Like, we're only snobs about comedy. Like, you can, I truly, truly believe that you can make jokes about almost anything, but it's about learning how to tell that joke, and again, looking for the right laugh. It's not about what topic it's about. It's about, is it shaped correctly to go for the right laugh or the wrong laugh? And like, I couldn't make him understand because he was really, 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 really deeply embedded in the like, sorry, little girl, you just don't get it,
Like,
and it was
dude,
like, this is really funny. This kills at the gym every time I tell it.
I was gonna say, just go tell it at a barbecue, bud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's just like, but comedy is a chance to bring the audience in. Every single person who's in that audience should be able to laugh at that joke. Every single person, every woman, every man, every person of every color, no matter how they identify, everybody should feel safe to laugh at jokes. And like, that's your job. And if you don't see that as your job, then that's not, then this kind of isn't the business for you, probably. And, when done correctly, you can hopefully even change people's worlds a little bit and change their minds a little bit without even realizing kind of what you're doing. That was something that was really, really cool, again, with working at the Second City in Detroit. We had an opportunity to, the Second City is about making fun of the community that it's in, the region that it's in, the state, the country, all of it, your world, right? You're putting your world on. And so in Chicago, you're going to tell jokes about, the Bears and, I don't know, ombudsman. I don't know. But you make jokes about local stuff if you want to. And in Detroit, Detroit was a city that had gone through hell, when we started in the mid 90s, it wasn't, that long. I mean, it was long, but it wasn't that long after, riots that had happened in the 60s and people who had, moved out of the city and are now driving back down to see the show. And, you've got a responsibility to make those people comfortable and make them laugh and make them feel like they're having a wonderful time at this show that they paid a lot of money to come see. But if you get a chance to tell a joke or two that's really, really well crafted, that just happens to be about white flight or about one of these topics, and maybe get them thinking in a slightly different way, like it's a huge responsibility, but it's just an absolute honor to get to do, if that doesn't sound too corny. And we wrote a lot of material about stuff like that, about what Detroit had been through as a city. We also had more cast members of color at that time than any other second city had ever had. And so the voices on that stage were better represented. And so it was cool to be able to do. It was really, really, we did some good work there. And you look at a lot of the, we were talking about Mama's Boy, that troupe that I'm in out in LA. And then there's another troupe that I'm in called the 313. And, that's made up of a bunch of Second City Detroit folks who worked there one day. And if you, list off all the people who are in that group, it's like a lot of them, have gone on to do some really great things in comedy. And I think every single person in that group would tell you that it's because of the foundation that was laid at the Second City in Detroit. It's like, that's the reason why that specific group of people have, gravitated toward one another to be in a group together, is because we all had that foundation of that place was our education. And it was a pretty cool opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love about what you're talking about is that your perspective on the performance of improv and your role with it has changed throughout your career.
Oh, yeah.
You came in I'm an actor, I'm a performer, and then a writer, and then a director, and now the executive director at the Detroit Creativity Project. At this point in your career, what is it that is bringing you the most joy with this role that you have?
I like the naps, Joe. I like naps. I'm just kidding.
Very final chapter.
I want to watch Escape to the Country and take a nap. No, it's at some point, this was a surprise to me as much as it is to probably anybody else, but at some point, my career started taking a turn towards arts administration. And it wasn't I made this leap from I'm a director and a writer and now I'm going to go be this executive director. It started morphing, I really, as I've talked to you, obviously I'm very passionate about teaching improvisation. Yeah. And then that becomes I love putting, syllabi together. I love creating a lesson plan. I love, and then that grew into kind of behind the scenes of the training centers of these places. So in LA, while writing for TV and doing these other things, I also became the associate artistic director of the Second City in Hollywood, working with Joe's cousin, Joshua Funk, who was the artistic director and still is in Hollywood. And so he and I worked together, and he ran the theater side of things and I ran the training center side of things. And then that morphed into me getting an incredible opportunity to get a promotion and become the artistic director of the big training center in Chicago. So got to move in the middle of COVID, jealous, and moved to Chicago in a pandemic, going across the country. Highly recommend it. And got to run that. That training center has 12 different programs and, a film school and all these amazing, incredible programs, and got to do a lot of syllabus creation and that stuff for that. So all of that drew me toward that side of things. And with all of it, it was the heart of all of that is the students, whether it's your adult students in Hollywood, your adult and kid students in Hollywood or Chicago or wherever. And throughout all of that, the through line of kind of my heart project was the DCP, was the Detroit Creativity Project. Like I said, I started, so I moved out to LA in 2014, and I started working as a teaching artist for DCP in their pilot program in like 2012. So I did that before I ever even went to LA. And then like a lot of the teaching artists who work for us are these incredible, amazing people who've made their careers here in Detroit. A lot of them are my really, really dear friends from Second City, Detroit, and I've known them for years and years. And they're like, I mean, these kids don't even realize, like, they know they've got these amazing, incredible teachers, but I don't even think they realize the talent that walks in weekly to teach them. Like, it's really an embarrassment of riches. The teaching artists at the DCP, they're all, decades of experience, super amazing, incredible. So so it was always there, like that organization. I served on the board, going to board meetings, going to, flying home from LA to see shows in Detroit. And it just made my heart so happy. Yeah. So like, that's kind of where it naturally morphed, was like while I was becoming more of an arts administrator. But I don't think in those early days, if they had said to me like, yeah, you want to be executive director, I don't think I would have been able to be effective at it. Like, it's really funny. And I'm sure you could both tell this story with your lives having taken you to Atlanta. It's like you turn around at some point and your life kind of happened to you and for you in a way that's really, really cool. And this is one of those moments in my life where I get to see, there's years that are where your life is in process of things changing and happening. And then there's like the result of it years, and I really feel, and maybe it's because the world is calming down a little bit now. Pandemic. Are we still in a pandemic? We don't know anymore. But like I'm also to that point where I've been able to turn around this year and go, oh, that's what just happened for the last 7 years. And that's why, like, I was associate artistic director, so I could become artistic director, so I could learn this and get to do this and get to work in this area. Because when I started, I was purely on the artistic side. I was like, spreadsheets? No, thank you. Like there wasn't that administrative side of me, and there is administrative work to this job. My job with the DCP is to help us grow in the city of Detroit and to help us, take us in new directions and not new directions, but expand our directions and, to work with as many people as I can in this amazingly talented city. Yeah. I go all the time to events that are just like, oh, there's representatives from 50 other arts organizations that are here, and every one of them is doing this amazing work in the city of Detroit. So I'm just so lucky that I was able to go like, oh, I get it now. I get why this all happened. Yeah. And it kind of all led here.
And with your new role in your not new home, your old home was new again. What goals do you have for DCP moving forward?
Well, part of what I just said, I mean, I think partnerships. Like I don't, we've been, we've had a presence here in the city, but a lot of our leadership has, it was started by a group of folks that live in LA. Yeah. And so being able to kind of have boots on the ground here in the city and just sort of expand our identity. And that's where I'm the most intrigued. Like, I think that our partnerships with the schools, so the way we're a nonprofit, and the way we partner with schools is we'll identify a school that would love to have us come, do improv, and then we will seek out the funding for that. We work very hard to fundraise for that. Go to DetroitCreativityProject.org if you'd like to give to this amazing cause. We seek the fundraising. It's all paid for is what I'm saying. We come into a classroom, and obviously there's no charge to the schools that we're working with. And so the corner of what we do with the partnership that is the district, it is what it is. I think that that will continue to grow. It has continued to grow, and we've been in more schools every year. But the community efforts that are happening, I meet these people who run these organizations that are just incredible, that are working with youth in different regards, and they're doing the coolest stuff. People who are working in hip hop, and people who are working specifically with young women to help them, have a stronger voice. And, I meet all these amazing, usually, EDs of other organizations. And I'm like, oh, I want to work with you. And it's just finding ways to partner with all these people. That's what I'd love to see us do. I'd love to see us have more of a community footprint as opposed to just the school district, to partner with more organizations where we're out in the community for more after school programming, more programming for adults, on a community basis, so that anybody and everybody who feels like they need improv training can come to us and get it. That's what I'd eventually love to see us do.
That's wonderful. And I know it is very based within your community, and you were forced to do virtual options during COVID. Is there any virtual part of DCP at this point?
Yeah, there are still, I think there are remnants of virtual left in a lot of things.
Yeah.
Having said that, for example, one of the schools that we work with is called the Detroit Virtual School. Like, there is now a virtual school, so we still do training with them. And yeah, I mean, I think absolutely it is, virtual's here to stay. It really is. And, again, when we first started the pandemic, I was still working with Second City, and we turned things into a virtual training center as quickly as we could. And that was definitely one of the things, as we were allowed to come back into the building, it was one of the things we all felt very strongly was like, we need to keep this virtual training going, because there was something so cool about, after having this art form that took place in one classroom for so many years, to teach a virtual class and like, hi, this person's in Paris and it's 2 a.m. and they're at this, and they're in this class, and this person's in South Africa, and like, to bring all of these people together, like people from literally all over the world were able to study at Second City. And so to be able to work with anybody you want, to be able to learn from anybody you want, and take classes from, pretty much anybody, like, that is reason enough, I think, for virtual training to remain. So yeah, I think that virtual training's here to stay, and we will utilize that in every single way that we can. Moving forward, for sure.
Yeah. This is all wonderful. Thank you so much for chatting with us a bit today. It was wonderful to reconnect.
You asked me.
It's been a few years since we got to chat in person, so this has been good for my heart.
It's been good for mine too. Congratulations on everything.
Oh, thank you.
You're
You as
crushing it
well.
In Atlanta.
Yes.
So good to see you.
If people wanted to go find out more information, you have the website. Do you have
DetroitCreativityProject.org.
social medias for
yes, we are on the Instagrams and the Facebooks, and I'm of course I can't remember which is which. Yes, we are Detroit Creativity Project, just like that. It's DCP Improv. And we have a link tree that you can find on our Instagram page or our Facebook page. Once you find us on any social media, you'll be able to find us absolutely everywhere. We'll never leave you alone again. No, just kidding. But no, you can see a lot of the great stuff that we're doing. You can see a lot that's going on. We have fundraising events that happen in all of the cities where we're represented, which includes Los Angeles, because again, that's where our founders live, and some of our board members. So there are often fundraisers that happen in LA. We have one of our board members in Atlanta, as a matter of fact. So we have board members all over the country, some here in Detroit and some in different places all over the country. So yes, please check us out online and check out our website. I'd love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Please, everybody, check out that website. It's really well put together. The information is astounding, and there is a video that you can click on called Why Improv. And it's pretty great. It's like a 2-minute, 30-second video. And, back to what we were talking about earlier, of like, it's not just for performers, they go through a little montage of asking these kids like what they want to be when they grow up. Sure, some are actors, but then there's like a marine biologist and a coder, check it out.
And there are absolutely, that video is from our early years, and that's exactly what I was talking about earlier, of like, I'm like, some of these kids have become teachers. Some of these kids have become, police officers in Detroit. Like, and they're utilizing these skills in those new ways. And cause that video, has been around long enough for the proof to be in the pudding, where a lot of those kids are now adults and are kind of walking the walk with this training. So it's, and there's gonna, I think there's gonna be more of it. I referenced that study that we had done through the University of Michigan a few years back about what it does for social engagement for kids, and there's been a lot more studies about that, and I think it's pretty huge. I think in terms of what it does for everybody that studies it is it's kind of become a little undeniable now. So go out and take an improv class, world. It will make you a better person.
Absolutely. I think we'll end on that. That's a wonderful message. Thank you so much for chatting with us about your journey, everything you're doing at DCP. You're doing amazing work.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen. The next time I'm in Atlanta, I'll look you up.
Absolutely.
Please
Let's
do.
do
Next
it.
time you come to Detroit, we'll hang out here.
Yes, let's do it.
All right.
All right. You have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.